Awesome. Hi, everyone. We are live. I see a lot of people already here on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for coming. Today, we're so excited to have our buddies from Dovetail and Canva on as we chat about how to make yourself future proof. Will AI take over your job, or will AI help you as a designer? Let's discuss. Today, we'll talk about how AI and machine learning will impact how we design. As you get started, there is a slight 30-second or 10 to 30-second delay on what you see here and on LinkedIn. But as we wait for everyone to chime in, we would love to know from you all, where are you tuning in from and what are your favorite AI tools? I see so many people saying hi in the chat on LinkedIn. Howdy, everyone. Yeah, what are y'all tuning in from and what are your favorite AI tools? What about y'all, all the panelists? Sarah, Jess, Sean, where are y'all tuning in from and what are y'all's favorite AI tools?
I'm tuning in from Sydney, Australia. My favorite AI tool, I'm going to be boring because I use ChatGPT more than anything. I love using it for brainstorming. I don't think it's particularly good at writing things like copy, but it's definitely good at getting sort of the ideas out there, getting the motor running. Just a good starting point to brainstorm.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm also dialing in from Sydney. I think my favorite AI tool would be kind of like the cluster functionality on either Figma or Dovetail. I think that just really speeds up my synthesis process when I'm going through, insights that I've come up with from research.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Jess, and I am also tuning in from Sydney, Australia. And my favorite AI tool, I have to admit, it is a tool on Canva. It's our magic edit function where you can scribble over any part of an image, type in when you want to replace it with, and it magically adds it in with all the lighting adjusted. And I think it is very, very cool.
That's beautiful. I'm Grace. I'm tuning in from San Francisco, California, from a WeWork phone booth. And my favorite AI tool is Perplexity AI. I use it to ask questions for research. I like it because it cites the sources. And oh my God, we have 233 people live on LinkedIn. Hi, everyone. Very excited to see y'all on here. Very excited to kick things off. So I'll hop over to first Design Buddies. If you guys are new to Design Buddies, I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies when I was a student, almost 4 years ago, actually. I was studying engineering and I wanted to get into UX design. So I want some friends, and here we are today as the largest UX design community in the world now. So we do a lot of events, both online and in person, San Francisco and around the world, design challenges, content, and more. I'm also a content creator where I make content on LinkedIn and Instagram. And my day job is I'm a UX designer at a large tech company. We're so excited to have Dovetail with us. And I'll hand over to Sean for a special announcement from Dovetail. Take it away, Sean.
Hello, everybody. Hello, chat. Let us know where you're from. I just wanted to let you all know, if you haven't already heard about it, Dovetail is throwing its first industry conference in San Francisco on April 11. It's called Inside Out. It's going to be an incredible time. And I want everyone who can come and visit us in SF when we're there. So we're in Australia right now, but we'll all be flying over and we'll be putting on this conference. It's going to be amazing if you like discussions like this. There's going to be product leaders speaking that you can learn from some of the world's most innovative organizations like Uber, Meta. We've just engaged the former CPO of Cloudflare, who's now the president of Plaid, Jen Taylor. She's going to be amazing. She's going to be our keynote speaker. And if you are keen to go to the in-person experience, we have a competition currently running with our friends at Design Buddies. And all you have to do is, I'm just going to share my screen. All you have to do is go to the Inside Out website and register for the free online experience. So it's completely free. So why not? You can access all the sessions there virtually. So if you're not able to make it in person, it's a great opportunity for you just to be able to check out the talks. We'll also be recording the talks and you'll get them in your inbox afterwards. So head on over to the Inside Out website and register for free. After that, go over to our LinkedIn where we have a question that you can answer there to enter the competition to get a in-person ticket. The in-person ticket is worth $499, but we're giving it away for free. So if you enter our competition, so go to LinkedIn and answer the question, what part of your research process could AI best help with? Now, after that, the final step is like Dovetail's page, like Design Buddy's page, and then we'll be giving away 5 free tickets to the in-person experience in SF. That's all from me. So good luck to everybody, and I hope to see you there.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. I will be at Inside Out as well. So if y'all want to meet me, I'll be there. I also have a hacker house in SF called the Bunny House. So more on that soon. Today we have like 400 people live with us right now on LinkedIn, which is crazy. I love all the buddies here. So feel free to use this chat to ask any questions. We also have a lot of questions prepared, segmented into like AI in general, working with AI, and designing AI products. So at any time, feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat, and I'll be guiding through. And we're also really excited to be here with Sarah and Jess, designers from Dovetail and Canva. And without further ado, let's have us introduce each other. So take it away, Sarah and Jess.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a lead product designer here at Dovetail. Across the span of my career, worked in a few enterprise companies and now focusing more on the startup environment. So I've been working at Dovetail for about 6 months, heading up a product pillar where we're looking at introducing AI to make the research process easier. That's me.
Awesome, thank you. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess and I'm a principal product designer at Canva. And I've been at Canva now for just over 4 years, and essentially I lead our AI design team. So when we look at all our magical AI experiences across Canva, which I hope you've all had a play with, I lead the design of those and ensure that it's a great experience end to end for everyone.
Awesome, very excited. I'm so excited about the AI features Canva has as well. I see everyone chiming in the chat. I know there's like a delay, and so thanks for your patience. I see Zachary from San Francisco, ChatGPT to revise writing on portfolio and resume from Miami, NYC. Amazing. That's cool. Thanks, buddies. Let's hop into our topic. So AI, ChatGPT was released like end 2022, and we've seen a lot of advancements since. Currently, do you think AI has lived on its hype? Why or why not?
Sarah?
I think like this kind of reminds me a little bit about, it's going to sound a little bit unrelated, but stories you hear of when people win the lottery and their happiness spikes a lot. And then after a time, it returns to the baseline. And I think humans are really good at habituating to new circumstances. And so I think when we talk about whether AI has lived up to its hype, I think we've become really used to technology that's actually pretty amazing very quickly. And our expectations of it are really, really high. So I think when I think about has it lived up to its hype, I think we kind of have like become used to the sort of amazing technology that has come out in the last few years. And that is now our new normal. And so maybe when we think, if it hasn't lived up to its hype, I think because we are used to things that would have seemed incredible a few years ago and now seem what we kind of expect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what you said there, Sarah. And just to build on top of that, I think it really depends on the perspective that we're taking. So, are you someone who has been playing with technology for a really long time? Are you an engineer? From what walk in life are you coming from? And I think, if you are coming from, I'm coming from a designer perspective, an engineering perspective, the advancements have been beyond what we could have ever imagined. It has opened up so many doors for us. From that standpoint, I think it has. However, on the flip side of that, there are so many other areas that I don't think it's lived up to its hype. So when we're thinking about the environmental impact that AI actually has, that a lot of people aren't thinking about, all the servers and all the underground technology that needs to take place to enable AI. I don't think it's lived up to its hype in that regard. And I think there are so many pros and cons from both sides.
I agree. I feel like AI will be kind of part of our process, like designers, in my opinion. I think we'll be kind of expected to use AI tools in our everyday workflow, but there is a lot of I guess like I thought in the comments, like ethical considerations as well. Like, what is the data AI is being trained on? Is this real or not? And with all the like copyright lawsuits, writers and stuff, I think there's like definitely, it depends. Like everything in life, it depends. Kind of flashing forward to the next couple of years. I know we all can't predict the future, but based on what we think, what we see now, how do you all see AI evolving in the next 5 years, and what implications might this have for design?
Yeah, I know that we can't predict the future, but there is this concept called future thinking, where we essentially take a look back on the 10, 15 years to understand what has taken place in order for us to trace the trajectory of, the implications that it have on the future. So when we're thinking about AI right now and thinking about similar technological advancements that have happened in the past, such as, the introduction of the iPhone, the internet, we can really think about AI in that sense. So I think it is really about how is it going to evolve? I think it is going to shift the way that people work, the way that people engage with these technologies. It might shift the design, the way people think about design. Do I think it's going to change everyday life? Potentially to a degree, but I don't think it's going to have that impact on the way that we go about things in our day-to-day necessarily. I think we're still a long way from that, and we can use those markers from the past to really think about how that's going to change in the future. So a really fluffy answer, because I don't want to predict the future, but I think that I'll leave it up to everyone here to think about the impacts of technology in the past and how that might impact the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think to add on to that, one kind of analogy that I know that designers at Figma talk about is the concept of raising the ceiling and lowering the floor. I think that might be the implication that has on design in the next 5 years. I think the barrier to entry to producing work and doing good work will decrease, and more people will be able to do good work. And then the capacity will increase as well. If you're at sort of a top in your field, what you'll be able to do, I think, will have like some shifts up as well, and we'll kind of like increase that space that we're playing in. But I agree. I think like we've got a way to go before it starts to like truly impact that day to day in major ways.
Definitely. I think it will make innovation and us be more productive overall. I see 538 people live on LinkedIn, which is so great. Hi, everyone. I'm going to highlight some comments along the way too. So at this time, feel free to like jump in with any questions anyone has in the audience. So Leo says, I previously worked on AI products and have used AI in my design process at various stages. I'm excited for this talk. A tool I recently have heard of and impressed is Reloom.io. You can generate a sitemap, basic page content in order, and then convert this into lo-fi wireframe in just a couple of minutes. Really incredible. Thanks for sharing. I never heard of Reloom, but now I want to check it out. Not sponsored or anything. Let's hop into our next question. I know there's like a talks about fear, like, oh my God, am I going to be replaced by AI? So like, there's lots of fears that AI will replace the need of a lot of human labor, not just design. Do you think design is at risk here?
I don't want this to be famous last words, but my immediate feel is no. And there's kind of some reasons for that. And I think at the heart of what we do in product design is center people in technology. And I have a hard time imagining a future where centering people in technology is the job of technology to do, at least in the reasonably medium term. I think there'll be parts of our job that might look different. There might be certain parts of that we do that are more repetitive or more repeatable that we might not end up doing anymore. But really, at the core of our jobs is solving problems for users. And I think that we have those skills right now, and for I think the foreseeable future, better than AI. And that's because of how we learn and how AI learns. I think, controversial take. I think AI is not as smart as us. It just has longer to learn and longer to perfect its craft versus, our skills and abilities is seeing, connections between smaller chunks of data where you need like a large amount of training data for AI. Humans can make connections between smaller amounts of data. And I think that's where as our role as product designers, our situations are often very unique. There's elements of it that are repeatable. We don't reinvent the wheel with design patterns, but the problems that we're solving for users and the conditions that they're in and the environments that we're working in organizations are often very unique. And I think that's where our skills will be put to use. So in short, I don't see a immediate risk to our job. But interesting what you think, Jess.
Yeah, I think you really captured a really important point in there, and that's that human factor. And when we're thinking about LLMs and AI, language is really limited in how we describe the world. So there's so much ambiguity in natural language and how humans talk to each other, the semantics that we have and that require human input. So designing for directability, designing for understanding those semantics are really hard to capture without that. So I think that our role as designers may need to evolve to consider all of these AI factors, but I think we need to do that in order to help guide the system. So the system doesn't see intent, it doesn't see that larger context, and that's where the human input is really crucial to help guide the LLMs. So I think that human input, just like most things in the world, are critical. Without it, it's going to fall apart, because I agree with Sarah in the sense that we're just not quite there yet. So I think it's okay to rest assured for the time being.
Agreed. I think AI still needs humans, like data from humans to train from too. And I feel like humans are so complex. There's like emotions, and designers, we work with like product, engineering, marketing, business, it's all like a puzzle. And right now I feel like AI is like an 8-year-old kid and can think critically as humans can. So I'm personally not worried about it, but I'm very excited to see how AI can help me be productive. Johnny says in the chat, I think AI is used to help give us ideas. For example, we would need to input a specific prompt into ChatGPT if you have no design experience to get started on how design works. So I think AI is a good idea generator, but also it like hallucinates, or it's also important to fact check whatever ChatGPT gives you as well. Let's hop into our next question. So kind of like on a job, like in what ways do you imagine AI helping you do your job better? And what do you think aspects of your job might be at risk as designers specifically?
Yeah, we've actually done quite a bit of research on this at Canva. And one of the biggest things that AI allows us to do is really to understand users and designers, because we are users at the end of the day of AI. What are our aspirations? What are our core goals? And what peripheral tasks can AI automate? So I think all those peripheral tasks, all the in-between tasks that we actually find quite tedious, that's where AI can come in. So you can really focus on the core goals. So an example of that might be, you might come into Canva to create a wedding invite. But your aspiration isn't to create a great wedding invite, it's to create an amazing day to celebrate love. So you can really focus on the celebration of love rather than the task of creating that wedding invite. So I think that it's all those peripheral tasks that AI will help us automate.
Couldn't agree more with that. I think, and this is, not to jump ahead a bit, but when I think about designing AI tools for others, it's those peripheral tasks rather than the core intent, and how can it be used as a supplement in your process. Things that I have found so far that it helps me do my job better. Again, in research processes, I think there's like a huge ability for AI to help you summarize and consume large amounts of data in a way that would have taken a lot longer before. So being able to, get summaries out of things that you've, interviews that have been run or secondhand sources, and using that to inform your processes. I think that is something that's really improved in my workflow, saves me a lot of time, and is also work that I didn't find in, all that enjoyable in the first place. I mean, I'm not sure about everyone else, but reading a really long document and then coming up with a summary out of it is not my favorite part of the process. So that's something which I really love that AI can come in and do for me, because then it enables me to get to the parts of the job that I love better as well.
Same. If you had a magic wand, what would you both automate in your design role?
Documentation, hands down.
That is a great answer. I would say a big +1 to documentation, but I think as well, yeah, just the process of manually going through large amounts of data and pulling out what's relevant and interesting.
Same. I would automate have to make like pixel perfect mockups to hand off to devs. Like sometimes I accidentally like don't auto layout. It's like 13 pixels. I'm like, oh no. And yeah, I just like don't like that. So Chris says, I found AI has been helpful in suggesting how various personas might be motivated to use a feature or even problems they might have with it, especially if I'm not familiar with the type of user day to day. Oh yeah, it's another use case of AI. And I'm going to take some questions from the audience, and then we'll hop into like some current questions as well. So Chinmei asks, how can designers be instrumental in the Gen AI era? How can we contribute to the development process and advancement of AI for humanity?
I feel really passionate about this actually, because I think the skills that designers have make us uniquely placed to play a role almost as like AI ethicists in our organizations. I think the skills that we have when we are designing for inclusivity and thinking who are our designs not serving or who is excluded from this work and how can we make sure that they're not, are skills that are translatable into generating AI and are actually really important to have in the room and make sure that we're developing these tools ethically. So I think that is, for me, one of the major ways that we can contribute to the development processes, because our role is to be human-centered.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I think there are two parts to that. One being what you just talked about, Sarah, where it's, training how it actually impacts the output. But then there's just the user-facing interface that I think we really need to think about how to design for. And I went to this talk last year, and there was this keynote by Manish Agrawala, and he has abundance of knowledge in AI. If you don't know who he is, definitely go look him up. But he talks about how text inputs are essentially just black boxes and they are terrible design interfaces. But we see them scattered absolutely everywhere right now with AI. You see it in ChatGPT. It's just an empty blank box. You see it, across all the other tools that we have right now. But that isn't actually a very good UI tool. People really struggle to articulate what they have in their minds. They really struggle to get started with a single prompt. So I think there is the challenge there for us as designers. What do these new interfaces look like in this new world of AI? And I don't think we've solved that yet. And I think that it is such an important part of it, because the interface is what can ultimately lead to human error. So I think that that's something that we also need to think about as designers.
Not just screens anymore, but like Vision Pros and then human AI pin, and just thinking beyond your screen is something we should consider when interacting with AI and how we interact with technology in the future too. So Luca asks, what are some AI tools y'all use for research into this? I know we wanted to automate summarizing large papers and getting some insights from that. I was wondering if y'all know any tools that can help with that.
Not to plug my own company, but Dovetail for sure. So since I started work at Dovetail, that's really changed up my own research synthesis process in terms of, automatic transcription and summarization, in terms of, finding the relevant moments from within those interviews, in terms of clustering those to look for themes. That's a big one. But I would also say, I've tried using ChatGPT in a number of ways, some ways more successful than others. I'm hesitant to ask it like a broad research question and come up with answers, because I find that sometimes you can get hallucinations, where I've seen examples where it's just made up studies and websites. But, if you have secondary sources and want a quick summarization, putting that into ChatGPT and getting it to summarize it for you is also a really good use case.
I have to say my process is probably exactly the same as Sarah's. I actually do religiously use Dovetail, and I use it alongside Canva whiteboards as well. So a little bit of company coupling there. But then I also do use ChatGPT for that synthesis, but again, having to cross-check. So can't say my answer is very unique in that sense.
Now, ChatGPT, I feel like there's so many tools out there, but there's so many great ones like Dovetail, ChatGPT, Canva, and so many Perplexity, like so many more. It's all like what works for you, but it's also like helpful to try many tools and see which one you like the most and find the most value out of. And question from Dave is, AI's growth is exponential. Just look at the huge quality improvement in AI video creation over the past 12 months. Where will it be in 12 more? I know we can't predict the future. Will we end, do you all think right now, will we all end up as creative/art directors or curators and not creators?
That's an interesting one. I don't think that we will end up as just simply directors or curators. So I think a really big thing that when I'm thinking about futures thinking again, so when we go back into, when the iPhone was first released, people's jobs had to evolve with, the technological advancements. So there are professions out there that I think we don't even know exist quite yet. And I think that as designers, a skill that we really need to have is that adaptability and our willingness to accept change and adapt to that change. So I don't think we need to think of our jobs as being static and, oh, I'm engaging with Figma today, therefore, in 12 months' time, am I at risk of not having my job? Your job isn't Figma. Your job is design thinking. It's that critical thinking and also taking those skills with you as the industry changes. So don't think we'll just be directors. I think we'll still be designers with those key skills that we require.
Big plus one to that. Again, like I think of AI as a tool in the toolkit, not a replacement for the people operating the tools. In much the same way of other technological advancements, it's something to help assist, and we are going to need to adapt because the landscape has changed with the introduction of these tools. But I think we're still the drivers in my perspective and still will be, particularly in the next 12 months.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think AI would just help us automate the busy work so we have time to be more creative. Also, if you have designer's block, writer's block, creator's block, AI will help you get some ideas to start with. And honestly, I think everything's a remix anyways. And so AI is just there to help us, like start from scratch or automate some things so I can have more time to be more creative. And I see some questions about junior designers in portfolios. And I know there's a big concern I see in design buddies of like, oh no, I'm going to be, especially from junior designers, from what I've seen, is like, am I going to be replaced by AI? Oh no. And so I'm just curious, like, do y'all both think the emergence of AI will impact junior designers or people just entering the profession? How will it impact that?
Well, I think this comes down to, again, kind of what we were saying earlier about there's still going to be a role for designers as that human element. I think I see some risks to mitigate, which is, and kind of what Jess was saying earlier, you're not a designer because you Figma, you're a designer because you solve, problems and, solve problems for users. So I think there could be a risk here if we junior designers, if you're too reliant on thinking my job is AI rather than I need to learn my foundations. That's where I could see a challenge being. But I think if you focus on getting your design fundamentals, making sure you understand those basics and you're really rooting yourselves in solving problems for users, I think that you will be okay.
I totally agree with a lot of that. And I just want to also just add in a little bit more color to that in the sense that design isn't just, always being on the tools. It's also the business aspect that you need to think about, the strategy, also coaching as you move up in your career, managing people. A lot of that requires interpersonal skills that humans have. And I don't know if computers will ever have that. So I think there's a lot of other layers of design and, the creative field that you need to think about. And not just the output of an actual tangible design, I guess.
Definitely agree with that. And always stay curious and being curious and learning new tools and never settle. or always just like tap into your curiosities and always be interested to learn new technologies and how it can improve your workflow. And Jessica also adds, highly recommend junior and senior designers to learn how to write good prompts. And I know like prompt engineering is definitely a hot topic in AI. I'm just gonna scroll up to see if I missed any questions. So it's an interesting one. So Chris asked, how do you balance the ethics of AI sourcing against the excitement of everything AI with upper management? I'm not completely sure what this means but what I think is, how do you balance? I know AI is like still really new, and one of the cons of AI is like it could be trained on like copyright data and stuff. And we're curious, like how would you both kind of navigate using AI with the risk that it might be pumping out like copyright data or data that shouldn't be outputted by AI?
I think it's still really important to check your facts, check your sources, cross-reference. Just as you've probably been taught in university to always have multiple sources for something, I don't think that goes out the window just because you've used ChatGPT or AI. I think it's really important to go back to those foundations, particularly if it is something quite critical that you're working on and relies on that being factual. So I think that's still something that we need to consider.
I think, yeah, to build on that, I think it can be really tough. For example, in Dovetail, we work with helping companies make the most of their research data. And if we, use AI to provide summaries or automated insights that people then take and make product decisions on that have adverse outcomes, that's a really tricky area where we don't want to be responsible for putting that kind of, like ill in the world. So I think it's a really tough one, because at the same time, the industry is shifting and customer expectations are that they do have these tools available to be able to help in their workflows. So I think it's something that I wish I had a really good answer for, but I think it's something that we just have to keep learning and thinking about. Like, I think just asking this question to yourself about what could be the flow-on effects of this and how can we mitigate that and how can we take that seriously is a great first step to making sure that this is in the view.
Yeah. For me personally, if I'm using AI to like generate content, I only like to use it as a starting point and then adding my own thoughts to it, like generating an outline or like some ideas, but like no, not directly copy and pasting from there. A lot of great questions. So one from Ancho asks, with AI being exponentially boosted in the current era, every major platform out there is rushing to put out their own version of AI integrated into their products and compete in the market. As a product owner, what are the few considerations one should keep in mind to successfully integrate AI in their products and launch?
Yeah, this one is actually very, very relevant to Canva right now because we are integrating AI into the product. But I think that it needs to be put in quite thoughtfully. So I don't want you to just be thinking about injecting AI into your product for the sake of injecting it. You really need to think about what is the core problem that your company or that your user experience is really trying to solve, and how can AI really help solve that problem? And in the case that AI might not be conducive to solving that problem, then don't feel inclined to include that into your product solution. I think that it's more of a risk if you include it just for the sake of doing so, rather than thoughtfully integrating it. And another thing is to also just think about, how does this fit into your end-to-end flow? Are users having to go out of their way just to engage with this? Is it quite disruptive? Does it increase friction? I think there's a lot of those considerations that just go back to great UX. And I think that with AI, we really need to remember the fact that AI UX is still just good UX, and we shouldn't just let go of what good user experience are because of the emergence of AI.
I really agree with that. I mean, what we do and what we build and what we ship should be focused on solving real customer problems at its core. And I think we shouldn't just launch AI features because we feel like we've got to keep up with the market if they're not actually solving that real problem. I'd add to that with, I think a nice way to think about it is kind of tying back to what we said earlier about like the potential of AI to take up those kinds of peripheral pieces of work that, you know, people might not enjoy as much. So when you're thinking about that in your user base, think about who you're actually launching this for. And will this be something that delights them or something that doesn't delight them? If you're trying to take and automate a part of people's processes that they really love, that might not be the best first step. Find something that is like an annoyance or a friction and solve a problem first. And I think it'll be an easier sell. And you'll also have, you know, when you're thinking about things that people really don't like to do versus things that people really like to do, there's a much higher quality bar for that second one. So if you're kind of like pushing to get something out quickly and you're trying to take on, for example, you know, if you're a designer and you love putting together high fidelity interfaces and you want to automate that and have like an AI that does that, there's going to be a very high quality bar that you have to meet versus, you know, something that maybe they don't like doing, and any extra help that they can get is going to be appreciated in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't add AI for the sake of adding AI, but make sure you validate it with your users and make sure you're actually solving a need for them.
I also just want to add to that. Sorry, I'm just going to go back quickly because I think that you rose so many great points there. And I want to just also mention this point about invisible and visible design, and how, you know, you can think about AI in that sense as well. So what parts of the experience, as Sarah mentioned, that, you know, are peripheral tasks that you can actually make them feel invisible. So users actually don't realize that they're going on in the background. And then for the visible tasks, it's actually about how can we amplify those experiences and call them out even more. So we really emphasize that delightful part. And if you haven't looked up invisible and visible design, highly go and look that up.
Invisible design. What are some good examples of invisible and visible AI interactions in products today?
Yeah, there's one example that I believe was in a Twitter post, and it was about Uber. So Uber, when you go onto the Uber app, you know, you don't need to think about, okay, I got to find a cab. Where is the cab? You know, how much is it going to cost me? How long is the route going to take me? What they've essentially done is they've made all those parts of the user journey invisible. So all you have to do is type in your location, and all that work under the hood is taking place, a cab arrives, and you just need to get in. You don't even need to interact with the driver if you don't want to. So it's not only thinking about how to make the app experience and all those tedious tasks in between invisible, but also that sensual experience of going into a cab and having to interact and having to pay. It's made all of those parts invisible, and it's really elevated the part of, you know, getting home quickly and getting home safely. And yeah, I think that's a really good example of visible and invisible design.
Thanks for sharing. I feel like social media, maybe the algorithms knowing they're for good or for bad, showing you relevant information for the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A question from Anna is, as we start designing for AI, what fundamental design principles do you think will still be relevant? Any new ones will be introduced? I know human-centered design is like still always going to be here because we're designing for humans, but curious, any like new frameworks or things about design designers should know with the emergence of AI-powered products and more?
That's a good question.
So in terms of fundamental design principles, I think they're called fundamental because they will be taken with you throughout your entire design career. You know, they haven't just been design principles that have been around for the past 5-10 years. They've been around for quite a long time, and they have withstood all those technological advancements that have taken place. I do think that new ones will be introduced. So when thinking about the ethical considerations, when thinking about those new user interfaces that we need to consider that take in specialties that, you know, previously designs haven't really had to think too much about. So when thinking about all the engineering considerations, all the psychotherapy considerations that we need to think about, I think that new ones will emerge from that. But I don't know what they are, but I think that we should definitely be thinking about them.
I think, yeah, absolutely. To add to that, I guess, like, if you could think of the analogy of like other technological advancements. So before, you know, the advent of the internet and computer interfaces, design happened on the page. Those principles that designers used on the page, things like white space, alignment, grouping, those principles have all stayed the same now that we design interfaces online. What was introduced as part of that change were things like interactivity. That was functionality that we didn't have on the page that we now have on the screen. So a whole set of new design principles came up about how to provide those affordances to make sure that people know what they can do with the interface. So I imagine that it's going to be a fundamentally very similar shift. There will be, as Jess says, new principles that come in that are going to help show people how to interact as well with AI. And I think that comes down to the whole thing of the black box of the type prompt as well. We'll come up with those defining principles. I wish I could come up with a list for you right now and say this is what's going to be fundamental. But I think what we find typically is like designers seem to swarm on these sort of principles and these patterns as we go. Like the affordances for clickability on a interface is pretty consistent. So I think we'll naturally gravitate towards the same ones as the field progresses.
They're all just trying to solve problems and make products of value and whatever it takes. No need to do every single principle, but it always depends. I also feel like with the rise of spatial design and Apple's Vision Pro, there's going to be more definition of how humans interact with 3D interfaces. Now you have 6 degrees of motion, not just a 2D screen. So I feel like that's an interesting one to look into and how AI will fit into that. Colin asks, what are your thoughts on how the future of interfaces will look like, since you mentioned how text boxes could be black boxes?
Yeah, I guess for this one, I have thoughts. I don't have answers as to what they might look like. And some of the questions that I've really been thinking about is how do we capture some of those semantics that gets lost in a simple text field? So when thinking about, the expression of text, how can we really magnify the meaning of those words? How can we magnify the expressions of, say, a chart, of text, of stories in text? What if text prompts aren't text prompts? What if they involve imagery? What if they involve scribbling? Think about all the other mediums of visual communication that we have, or even audio communication. How are we able to tell the inflections in someone's voice and understand the nuance? So I think that we should think a little bit more broadly from the text box and imagine that a text box doesn't even exist at all. And I think that's when you can really start getting into that design thinking and that creative flow to imagine a future, that might revolutionize the way that we use the internet as well. Because I don't know if it was Google that created the single text box, I think it was. That was something that has been carried on till today, but is it still relevant? And I think that's something that we really need to question and use our critical thinking skills.
Yeah, I really agree. And to add to that, I think there are patterns of communication that we already naturally gravitate towards as humans that we then come up with sort of graphical representations of. And what I mean by that is, for example, when, ChatGPT was produced, it gravitated towards that chat pattern. So that's a pattern that we already use for communication with friends. And then that pattern is then applied to, AI interfaces. So I imagine we should think about how we communicate with each other and how is that effective and how could we then translate that to a digital or technological experience? Because when things feel similar, even if the presentation of them might be different, but if they have that fundamental understanding, it's really easy to understand as a user how it works.
I really agree. Next question is, I just thinking beyond interfaces as well, and just don't limit yourself to a 2D box. Next question comes from Vident. Asks, how can designers tackle algorithm biases that could involve in data sets creation will help reduce that bias? I feel like this might stem from the fact that sometimes data could be trained, sometimes AI could be trained that data that is biased, and was wondering how you try to make your products less biased as a designer.
Really great question. I think humans train technology. So biases that humans have are then amplified in technology and then become that much bigger at that scale. So I think one of the strongest ways that we can tackle bias is making sure that our teams are diverse and representative, as well as we look really internally and do a lot of internal work on ourselves, because what the bias that we carry as teams is what is going to translate to what we build. So I think, again, it's a lot of it all comes back down to the human. So it's all about thinking about yourself and your teams and what you could be introducing.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I really recommend you do quite a bit of reading. There are tons of papers on these. I was actually just looking up a paper that I just read last week. The paper's called Inducing Anxiety in Large Language Models, Increasing Exploration and Bias. And I think that this paper really unpacks this topic and talks about the importance of engaging other specialties. So they do touch on the need for psychotherapy there. So definitely go and read all the journal articles out there, because I think that bias is actually quite a complex topic. It's something that I'm okay to admit that as a designer, I might not have that area of expertise, and I might need to lean in on other fields in order to adequately solve for that problem. So definitely go out and read journal articles is my recommendation.
Mm-hmm. And also ask for feedback. Like, I try to get as much feedback as I can from a wide variety of audiences, whether they're different fields, different locations in the world, different demographics, just to help them provide feedback from their perspective on my products too, because we all have different backgrounds and ways we grew up that shape our thoughts today. And I feel like there's always opportunities to learn from other people and seeing how we can design products that help as many people as we can. Sean asked, how do you deal with AI aversion and build trust with AI applications in your solutions? I feel like there's a big concern about data privacy, especially with like social media sites collecting your data to give you, like TikTok and Facebook, some concerns about that. Like, for example, like the collecting data to show you relevant information, and how do you like balance like user trust and also cultivating a personalized experience leveraging AI?
Yeah, this one here is also very relevant to what we're dealing with at Canva. And I think one of the biggest things that you can do is to build the trust with your customers. So when thinking about AI and the use of AI and the use of data collection, I think it's really important to be transparent and signal that upfront to your users. So when you're engaging with AI tools in Canva, we do let the user know that this is using an AI tool. Please check the sources. But also in terms of data collection, we allow users to opt in and opt out. Therefore, if they don't want to have their data collected for AI training purposes, then we give them that choice. So I think that choice and transparency is really important to ensure that you build trust with your users.
Yeah, to build onto that, and this is definitely similar to Jess, this is something that we're grappling with right now in Dovetail as we introduce and work with AI more and more in our product. And we've spoken to users who specifically have used the phrase, and I love this, is that they don't want AI to be the driver of their bus. They want to be the driver of their bus, and AI is the follower. So like making sure that you still keep your users in the driver's seat, I think is a really important piece, and make sure that they feel like they have the control versus things are just happening to them. And the other one is that and I loved that piece that Jess spoke about trust, because I think when we think about trust, we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. Again, there are design patterns that feel really familiar to people and how they consume products and trust them. And one thing that we're dealing with right now is, when we're doing these sort of AI generated summaries, and there was a piece coming back about how do I know and trust that this is accurate and how can I trust the output. There are some really neat design interactions and patterns that we can pull through, things like how people have been doing referencing and bibliographies in books and in Wikipedia for really, really long time, and pull those same patterns at like a micro scale, and being able to make it super simple to follow that thread from where these conclusions were drawn so that you can confirm it yourself. I think what we find is once users have done that a few times and start to trust the outputs, they feel the need to do it less as well. So you can build trust in the system. And I think when you're thinking about trust, think about how can you build a system that improves its trustworthiness over time.
I really agree. Cultivating trust with the users, and once that trust is broken, it's like kind of hard to win it back. So definitely make sure you're transparent and like make sure to just be communicative and transparent about where the data could be used from, where the data is stored, give them options to unsubscribe, opt out of data collection, and more control and trust. I'll highlight some interesting points by our buddies here. So Chris thinks I think looking at voice user interfaces has helped with designing, has helped with integrating co-pilots and other components within existing apps. Yes, voice, another mode of interaction, like 3D voice and how you interact with it. Ancho says, while we're talking about using AI to help us with these laborious tasks and give us more time and opportunities to exercise creative practices, I think we should also remember to use AI to aid us in maintaining and enhancing that human touch in our designs and processes that reflect our outcomes. Agreed. I think AI could also be used for good as well. This is an interesting question. So Helen asks, do you think that there could be a risk with good design work being quote unquote common via AI and therefore harder for companies to stand out from one another and be credible? It's possible to create brand logos, websites, etc. via AI. And although this is great for new and small businesses, it could also make it harder for users to compare companies and services at face value.
Interesting question. I think that definitely a few things come to mind here. I think firstly, there's different ways that you can use AI effectively. And I think I'm gonna sort of throw it back to everyone listening. When ChatGPT first came out, the kind of paragraphs and copy that ChatGPT wrote felt really unique and creative versus I feel now, sometimes it's easy to tell if something's been generated by ChatGPT. And that's, I think, down to the nuance and kind of that prompt engineering and how you use the AI and kind of like how you can utilize that as a toolkit. So I think it can still be a differentiator. I don't think we're going to have a completely level playing field where everyone's brands are going to feel exactly the same. Like I think there is a level of quality that you get from good work that I think is going to be a differentiator there. I'm not sure, Jess, though, if you've got different thoughts.
No, I totally agree with a lot of what you said, Sarah. And building on that, I think that, having that human touch is exactly what you brought out as well. But I think that you also need to have that critical thinking when you are taking the output and turning it into something of value to a customer base, for example. I don't think it's a simple copy and paste, and it shouldn't be, because in that case, you do run that risk of it being the same, but you also run the risk that you're actually not solving the problem. You're simply copying and pasting something that hasn't been tested, that hasn't been iterated upon. And those are the skills that you need to really think about when engaging with AI. And then naturally, as you go through that process, I mean, we all know the design process, naturally the thing will evolve to the point that it is unique or it isn't something like it is out there. And just thinking about that design process as well, I mean, competitor research is part of that, right? So if you're doing something and it feels very familiar to something else, you need to work out, what am I doing differently, or what are they doing really, really great that I can learn from and, potentially mold to fit my user base or my niche. So I don't think that this is something exclusive to AI. I think that people had this fear as well with the emergence of the internet, right? And yeah, that's where I kind of stand on this question.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, because totally agree. I think if we think about other technological advancements that helped, lower the floor for good design and make it accessible for more, we think just about things like portfolio templates. Portfolio templates have made it a lot easier for, junior designers and emerging designers to make good looking portfolios when they're applying for jobs. However, if there isn't that element of personalization or where you've come in and prove that human touch or adapted this to your work, it is quite quite easy now to see when these are copy and paste jobs. So I think it'll be similar things. Like if in the same way that it was easy to tell when people used other technological advancements and it was kind of cookie cutter and they didn't really add much to it, we kind of developed that sense. And I think it'll be similar with kind of AI branding and websites and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the more and more people are in your niche, the more bigger size your market is. So it's like good because you potentially have that many users you can captivate for your product too. And oftentimes, like I read this, I think article once about the second movers advantage, where like most first movers are the kind of the guinea pig, and the second mover who does it something similar will probably get more people. For example, like social media, like how Facebook exploded, and something, just another food for thought about everyone worried about people like competing with different products. Another interesting question from LinkedIn user. I don't know why the name's not showing, but hi, LinkedIn user. Regarding the integration of AI into your products, how does your product team collect and monitor data to ensure the quality of AI performance, given that AI can be biased, produce inaccurate results, or generate incorrect responses?
Yeah, at Canva, so we have quite a big, extensive integration of AI into our products, but we also have a really great team who focus on quality. We also have a great team that focus on trust and safety. And this is the human side and the not so glamorous side of AI, where we are just going through different results. We are putting in as many prompts as possible. We are putting in prompts that we would consider to be absolutely inappropriate for AI to see what does our algorithm return. And I think that we really need to think about all those different edge cases in order to design a tool that considers all of those biases and all those incorrect responses. But also in terms of the quality of AI performance, I think particularly at Canva, quality has always been something that we've prided ourselves on, and that doesn't change just because of AI. When we think about when we opened up our template marketplace to creators around the world, we also had to ensure that the quality was maintained. So we do have guardrails in place to ensure that that quality maintains with AI. It just means that now we have to build it a little bit more into the code for the AI generation system. It isn't easy, it isn't simple, and there are lots of results that are just fundamentally flawed and do look terrible, but that's okay because we can use that to build on top and understand what didn't go so well and how can we improve the algorithm so the output is maintaining that quality that we pride ourselves on.
To add to that, I think Dovetail definitely has that internal focus on quality as well. But another tactic that we use is asking our users. So people who are trying to obtain an outcome, whether it's summarizing a transcript, getting an automated transcript itself, getting suggested highlights, asking people, was that what you were looking for? Was that good? Was it a good quality? Was it bad quality? And this is a really simple thing to implement. We just do it with a thumbs up, thumbs down system. And that helps us collect that data about whether we're doing a good job. And so I think you can also ask your users are trying to achieve something with the AI tools that you're putting out to them. Ask them were they able to do it?
Yeah, great points. It's just life and design is all iterative. It's always room to improve and room to learn from, and they're never going to get it perfect. Perfectionism doesn't exist. It's always, for me, I think the fun is like in the learning process. I know we're coming on time, so I know we have a minute left, but is there anything that you both want to share with our audience today about AI design, career advice, or anything that you want to mention but haven't mentioned yet?
I think there was something during this webinar that you raised, which is stay curious. And I think that that is particularly relevant in this AI era where you need to not only stay curious, but also be proactive in that curiosity because there is so much research going on right now. If anything, it's almost overwhelming how much research is going on. And I think you really need to stay on top of that just because of how fast this space is moving. And when you're reading this, really think about how you can apply that research into your design work and the design process that you're using. And there are opportunities that open up after reading all of that. So yes, stay curious, but be proactive on that curiosity is my advice.
Definitely stay curious. That beginner's mindset is not just valuable for this, but for all the challenges that you tackle in your product design career. So really cultivate that. Focus on your design foundations, your research foundations. They will serve you well. And then I think also figure out what the environment that you are operating in, where the gap is. Are you on a team that's really bullish on AI? And how can you then provide a different voice in the room that brings in a different perspective? Are you on a team that's really afraid of AI? How can you provide a different voice in that room? Being a differentiator and helping have those conversations to help vector in on the sort of the right balance of implementing AI, I think will make you a really strong asset.
Agree. Stay curious, and talk is cheap. Take action as well. Ask questions and do it. Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah and Jess, for being on and taking your time to share your wonderful insights and experience with us today, and Dovetail for collaborating with us on this event. Make sure to check out Insight Out, happening in April 11th in San Francisco and online for free as well. And I will be there. Design Buddies will be there. We have a giveaway going on. And yeah, hope to see you there. And we're excited for AI, and stay tuned for more events, including an in-person meetup at Dovetail's office in San Francisco at the end of March. And kind of near the conference, so don't want to miss out on that. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful day, everyone. For our panelists, we're going to stay on for a little bit for retro.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.